Hey guys, so today I want to talk to you about my leg operation that I had when I was 11. I had a tongue and groove cut in my Achilles tendon to lengthen it, and I had a calcaneal osteotomy to improve the position of my foot. So this means that they cut out a piece of bone from my shin and inserted it into my foot, and they used screws to fix it into place. So a calcaneal osteotomy is a controlled break of the heel bone to correct deformity of the foot and ankle. So as this was quite a long time ago, I don't fully remember how it improved the way I walk, but what my parents have told me, before the operation, my Achilles tendon was very tight and my heel wouldn't touch the ground and my right foot would turn outwards. So back then I would be walking on the side of my foot, and so this operation realigned my foot and corrected the way I walk. So I was absolutely terrified of this, as this was the first operation I'd ever experienced. I knew that I was going to have this operation for quite a while, but my mum only told me of the date of the operation a week before because she knew I'd worry. And I just remember being in the seating area in this children's ward, and she just told me, and my heart just sank, and I just felt so worried after that. So the plan was that I would sleep in the hospital the night before and have the operation the next day. And so me and my mum on the day went over to the hospital with all my things, and then they said, I think the doctors said, you're only going to have the operation in the afternoon, so you can go back home and sleep at home. And so I was really relieved about this, and we just left my things by the bed in the hospital, and so I was really glad that I didn't have to have the operation until the afternoon. But the next day I was so nervous, and I totally changed my mind. I didn't want to wait. It was a horrible feeling nervous for hours. This nurse came up to me and she said, do you want to do some drawing in the activities room? And so that's what I did. And then when it came that I had to have the operation and they were wheeling me to the operating theatre, it was horrible. I was so nervous, and I think I was in this room before you go into the operating theatre, and my mum told me that my face went completely white. Yeah, that's just how nervous I was, really. So when I woke up, it only felt like a second later, but I woke up and this weight of just came off my shoulders, really. It was such a relief that it was over. I saw Tracy Beaker on the TV in the corner, and I was obsessed with Tracy Beaker at that point, and I think I just said I just shouted, Tracy Beaker's on TV, and so the nurses just brought the TV closer to me, and I don't actually remember being in pain or anything. I think the morphine just sort of dealt with that completely. So shortly after that I felt so hungry, and I ate everything that they gave me, but because I hadn't eaten before the operation, really, I threw up an hour later, which wasn't nice. So after that I stayed in the hospital for 5 days, so they could keep an eye on my recovery. I was really nervous about staying in the hospital by myself, and there was this bed next to mine that was empty, so my mum decided to sleep in that bed, and that made me feel so comfortable. And what I remember also is that, I'm really squeamish, and there was this needle in my hand, and I absolutely hated looking at it, and so the nurses covered it up the whole time, and I was just so relieved when it came out. There were 2 girls in my room, and they had spine operations because they had scoliosis, and they would cry in pain at night, and it was just horrible. Hearing that, I felt for them so much. So towards the end of staying in the hospital, my dad never lets me forget this, but I told my dad that I loved the hospital, and I think it might have been the morphine, but When I think about it, I think it might have been because the night before my mum didn't stay at the hospital, and I got closer to the nurses, and so I felt more confident about being there. So after the 5 days, I went home and I was in a plaster cast for 6 weeks, and I didn't have to go to school for 3 weeks, which as an 11-year-old was so amazing to hear. So as well as using crutches, I also used a Zimmer frame. So I'd use the crutches during the day and the Zimmer frame in the mornings. And I actually have a memory of getting up really early and watching Cartoon Network. I think Ed, Edd and Eddy was on, and me and my brother as kids would always watch Cartoon Network. It was the only channel we would ever watch. I was watching that, and then I got up and used the Zimmer frame to go into the kitchen. And what I remember is that I wouldn't use the Zimmer frame a lot, even though it was much easier than the crutches, because I thought it made me look like an old granny. And thinking back now, like, I just think that's so stupid. I would totally use the Zimmer frame if I had this operation now. So before using the crutches, I thought they were quite cool. But after using them every day, it got really frustrating. And I remember hopping around the house because I didn't want to use them, but I wouldn't dare do that outside, that would be too dangerous. But yeah, that's what I did sometimes. So after the 3 weeks, I went back to school. I was in year 6, and I just remember being really cautious when I went back, and also getting a lot of attention. So after the 6 weeks, my plaster cast was taken off, and these nurses took the cast off with an electric saw, and the way it was making this noise scared me quite a lot. But then the nurses showed me, it doesn't do anything to the skin, because they were putting it to the skin to their arm and saying does nothing, and so that sort of calmed me down quite a lot. So after that, I still used the cast. The doctors said that I just have to wear it at night time, and to wear my brace that I normally wear during the day. So I don't really remember this, but my mum told me that my scars healed up very quickly, and that I used oil to rub on my scars to stop it from tightening. So shortly after that, I started at secondary school, and I'm pretty glad that I had the operation before that, because for the next 8 years I'd be walking up and down a hill to go to school and back. And if I hadn't had that operation, I think I would have struggled a lot more. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
We dance.